Jenny from Just Being Me, and you're listening to the Learning to Love Yourself podcast, the show that inspires you to put yourself first.
Learning to love yourself on the path to happiness. Learning to love yourself on the path to happiness.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Jenny Field, and today we are spending time with the very lovely Debra Simmon. Deb is somebody that's been in my world for 3 or 4 years now, actually, isn't it? She is definitely one of the people that I go to when I want to have a chat with somebody that knows what they're talking about. So, Deb, tell us a little bit about you and what started your self-care journey.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jenny. I want to acknowledge you. It's been lovely meeting you, and the time that we have spent together, I treasure it too. So, yeah, cool. So I started my journey of realizing that I needed to be looking after myself and, doing more for myself when I got out of an abusive relationship. I was in an abusive relationship for over 20 years, and I'm sure you can imagine, I didn't thrive. I had 3 children and they weren't thriving or doing very well. Life was not great. It was a mess. I got out of that relationship and I was in a space of trying to turn my life around. My youngest child was 9 at the time. And then my 2 girls, that was my son. And then my 2 girls were a bit older. There was quite a gap between the 3. And so they were coming up to being adult. I wasn't parenting small children. If you're a parent, at what age are you not parenting your children? I left this relationship over 10 years ago, and now my children are grown and I have grandchildren and I'm still a parent. So I was trying to work out how to parent my children. And I realized that from the place I was drowning, literally. I'd been drowning for years and I still couldn't breathe, did not know how to do this, was not on firm ground. And so it was then that it was like, I actually have to start to take care of myself. And it was that old adage that, I don't know whether you've heard this one, but this really impacted me. This, when you're in an aeroplane, the way that it works, if there is something happens in the aeroplane and the oxygen masks fall down, they insist that you put your own oxygen mask on. If you've got a small child, a baby, anyone, they insist that you put your own oxygen mask on before you help someone else. If you don't, then potentially you're not going to be in a position to help yourself or help anyone else. And I kind of realized I had been trying to help my children. And it was literally like I'm underwater trying to hold my kids up like this. And I was getting to the point where that just wasn't going to be able to happen anymore. So that was the time when I realized it was either start taking care of yourself, or if you don't, this is kind of nothing is ever going to get any better, really. So.
And it's an interesting thing, isn't it? How a lot of people think that when you leave an abusive relationship, that everything gets better magically. But that's the way you've learned to live, and that's your belief system is within that abusive relationship. And actually, there is a whole load of healing, learning, and understanding to happen after you leave, because the very least thing that you do when you're in an abusive relationship is you live with that adrenaline going through all of your body, and that's addictive.
Yeah.
So when you leave and you don't have that adrenaline going through your body, you're dealing with that.
It absolutely, it's like the first step on a completely new journey, but you're already, you've been on this journey. So you are still in this place. And one of the reasons that you will have got into an abusive relationship, I can see this in me, is because of who you were, even at the beginning of this. And this is not victim blaming, but I can see now I could not be in an abusive relationship because of who I am being.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was insecure. I was needy. I believed that love came from outside of me. I believed I needed validation from other people. So I was a prime candidate to be in an abusive relationship. And so even when I got out of it, I was still that person. Obviously, there was the beginnings of that turning round, because if you're not beginning to change, you don't get out of it. And
absolutely.
Or if you do get out of it, you immediately get into, like, there's a very high percentage of women who come out of an abusive relationship and go straight into another one, because And definitely, I am not condoning I'm not condoning behaviors or any of those kinds of things. But there is a huge element that if you stay the same person, you're going to keep getting the same thing. So if you get out of an abusive relationship, unless you do the work, unless you look to yourself, unless you are prepared to not be a victim anymore, unless you're prepared to say, there's a part of this that was on me, and if I am different, this can't happen. And that's a huge, and part of self-care for me is that it's like taking an honest, truthful look at who I am and changing myself. And it can be hard. When you've been in something like that, it can be a hard thing to kind of go, oh, was there something that, I could have done different? And this is never, never, never about blame. It is absolutely about looking at, okay, so if I am different, and the great news is you have the power to be different. And when you have the courage to look and see with the power and that courage, great things can happen.
So is that your start of your self-care? Because I know the journey that you're on now, which we will get to, but you were aware of that when you started it?
I think the start of it for me it was definitely more about my children initially. And I loathed myself. I cannot tell you how much I hated and loathed myself for what had gone on over all of these years, some of the things that my children had suffered and gone through. And I wanted to make that better. I wanted to fix my children and I wanted to make it better. And at some point, there was actually, I sent my eldest daughter, I sent her away to live with my sister when things got so unsafe at home for her to be there. And much, much to my shame now, but that's okay. That was the best I could do in that moment. And so she lived with her cousin, who is a very similar age. There's only a few months between them. They're two young teenage girls. Obviously, they spoke a lot. Obviously, my daughter told her a lot about what had gone on. She already had an idea, but she got details, obviously, because they lived together. And so totally understandably, my niece really hated me because of what her beautiful cousin had gone through, which I totally understand. I totally get it. And at one point, that all came out. As I was beginning to turn my life around because I'd come out of this relationship, she actually told me that I did not deserve happiness. I didn't deserve to be okay. I didn't deserve a life. I didn't deserve all of this. And if I'm honest, I thought she was right. I did all of the things she was accusing me of. I did do them. But in that, I also had a realization, and it was actually a conversation with my daughter who lived with her. She actually said to me, Mum, please carry on the journey that you are on now. You are actually a beacon of light for me now. This is the first time you've actually really been there for me. Please don't stop. And that was a huge moment for me to realize that if I took on this, that I didn't believe that I should have a life, if I could not forgive myself, and that actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, then my children would continue to suffer. And the only way that I could actually help them and turn around their suffering was for me to forgive myself and step into who I could truly be. So one of the things, Kensley, this is a question you're going to ask. For me, true self-care is self-forgiveness and self-love. Don't get me wrong. I love candles. I love nice clothes. I love chocolates. I love buying myself pretty rings and nice things and all of that. But when I am truly caring for myself, it is about sometimes forgiving others, but definitely it is self-forgiveness. I forgive myself for all of the things that I did. I forgive myself for all of my judgments of myself. I judged myself not good enough. I judged myself that, nobody could love me. And the absolute forgiveness, I judged myself for what my children had been through. And without that forgiveness.
It's a really interesting thing, especially as a parent. You don't necessarily realize what knock-on effect that has on your children.
Yes.
It's something that I talk a lot about to my clients now, is the fact that do your self-care in front of your children.
Yes.
Be open about it and say that you're looking after yourself, because, children are sponges and they'll absorb that and take that on, whether it's now or later or whatever. You've giving them the tools. It's part of parenting, teaching your children how to look after themselves.
And the flip side of that, I volunteered at what was then Women's Aid and worked with a lot of women. And I still do work with women who've been in abusive relationships to help them turn things around. And one of the things that I heard many, many times was, oh, none of this ever happens in front of my children. My children don't know about this. Now, don't kid yourself. We are energetic beings. Who you are being energetically, your children know. Whether they know consciously, whether they can repeat, whether they have seen stuff, but we know who someone is energetically. We just know that. And so to me, that is a part of when we forgive ourselves, when we do these things, energetically we change. And even if nobody can ever put that into words, and exactly what you are saying, teach by example. When I look back at me trying to stop my children drowning when I'm under the water, the message I'm giving them is, be under the water, put yourself down. None of that is in words, but that's the loudest message I'm giving, because that's who I am energetically. And then it's like, hold up all your people, sacrifice everything and hold up all your people while you're drowning. That was the message. That's who I was teaching my children to be. And by turning this all around, I'm teaching them to be something very, very different.
Exactly. When you're doing that, you're holding your children up until they're no longer children. And then they know when they get into adulting, this is what adulting looks like. I just wrap myself and hold my children up.
Yeah.
And so, when you look at it from that perspective, do you want that for your grandchildren? It goes on, doesn't it? So what was your actual physical thing that you did? I know a lot of this is about mind, but, people think of self-care as let's go have a bath, let's go spa day or whatever. My thoughts are very different on that, because I don't believe that. But I do like a bath.
I had a spa day a few weeks ago.
But the thing for me with that, a bath lasts maybe 30 minutes if I'm really, really lucky, and then it's gone. A spa day is a spa day. Well, for me, the self-care needs to be something that is happening every single day. Absolutely. So what would that be? What was that for you?
So I was incredibly blessed that I came across an understanding called the 3 principles, which is a spiritual understanding of how human beings come to be having a human experience. What is it we are experiencing? Because when we're here as human beings, it appears that we are experiencing other people, we're experiencing all of this stuff outside, this world outside is coming at us, and that's what we're experiencing. And I had a moment of realization that actually this is an inside job. We are experiencing our own thoughts. We are experiencing, all of this stuff can be happening. And actually we are an integral part of the creation of what is happening. So we are both creating what is happening and we are experiencing our thinking about what is happening. And when I realized that, I saw that, so a lot of my behavior, all of my behaviors, everything that I'm doing, everything that's going on is coming from the thinking that I am having, that I am believing to be true. So a huge part of my self-care, as I said, is self-forgiveness. And how I do that is I look at the thoughts that I'm having. I know what I'm feeling. So if I am feeling something, what my feelings are telling me, like sometimes, I don't know, if I feel angry, say, for example, very often when we feel angry, we have been taught and told, and by lived example, we're told, well, if you're angry, it's probably because this person is doing something wrong and this person needs to be different. So you need to shout at this person and tell this person or this organization or this whatever, it's about them. Well, what I realize now is if I feel angry, what that feeling is telling me, if I can just put aside for a minute any of the details, the content of my thinking, and realize what the feeling is telling me, that content, that narrative, what it is you're thinking, that's not great at the moment because this feeling is warning you about your own psychology. And so when I begin to realize that, then my self-care says, okay, right, don't do anything right now. And at some point, I come back to equilibrium. We self-right. We come back and it's like, oh, what I need to do is, and we kind of see what action we need to take, what it is we need to do. So deepening my understanding and playing in that arena and asking myself questions like, who am I being and who do I want to be? That is my self-care.
And that is why you and I have such fabulous conversations. And I make deliberate times to talk to you because of the fact that in my world, I phrase it differently, but it's the same thing. It's self-taught. It's conscious thinking because big part of my self-care is the fact that I give myself time and space to either talk through with somebody that is in the same space as I am or to think it through for myself. So it is that trigger feeling of, even something as simple as, happy feeling. Where did that one come from? What's the trigger for that? Oh, need to know that because it's good to know that I can trigger that if I want to, because I have the choice to do that.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking, when you're sitting in your life and thinking, my partner doesn't make me happy, my family don't make me happy, you take all the choice.
Yes.
You know somebody else knowing and understanding what you as a unique person are, that they're going to get that and they're going to really understand that and know exactly what you need and all of those things, and also be in the space and for themselves to tell you all of these things. Well, that's way too much. That's way too much. Whereas I can sit down and go, oh, yeah, remember that. Yeah. And I'm in a good place.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's just amazing. That makes me be able to control my life in the way that I want my life to be.
Absolutely. And definitely a part of my mission is I am on a mission to change the way the world views relationships, because what I see is relationships, and a good relationship only takes one person to be different. Like very often, we say, oh, well, if they don't do this, or if they don't change in this way, or if they don't do this differently, and we don't need anyone else to do anything differently. If we show up differently, as I said, we are an integral part of the creation of the world that we live in. It's like there's not a world there and then we experience it. The world is created through us. So it's like there is nothing out there that is a separate thing from you. There is nothing out there that isn't an integral part of who you are. If anyone, I'm a quantum physics geek and I adore quantum physics. My dad was really into quantum physics from a young age, and there's a famous experiment and it's called Schrodinger's cat. And the sort of basis of it, and nobody truly understands quantum physics. If anyone says you totally get it, they can't. Well, I don't know. I'd love to meet them. If someone says to you they completely know what quantum physics is, please introduce me, because I haven't met a quantum physicist yet who says, oh yeah, totally got this. But the basis outline of this is there is a cat in a box, and the question is the cat dead or alive? And to demonstrate that quantum physics says the cat is neither of these things. The cat doesn't even exist. It is you. You know there's a cat in the box, and you open the box, and you will create the cat as alive or dead according to who you are showing up as being. So that's the basis of quantum physics. It kind of says there's no box, there's no cat, there's nothing going on here until you arrive and decide there is a box with a cat in it and ask the question, is the cat dead or alive? And open the box. You create it. So what that kind of means in a nutshell is that, we create all the people that you know in your life. They are your creations. And if that sounds ridiculous, just think of it like this. Every night you go to bed, you go to sleep, well, hopefully. And, from time to time, maybe every night, but from time to time, you dream. Now, when you are dreaming, there are other people in your dreams. Who is creating those people? They do not seem, in your dream, they feel like separate beings from you. People sometimes, monsters chase you, things happen. And it's like, you don't feel like that's you doing it. But when you look at how a dream is created, you are every person in that dream. You are all of that dream. And it's here we are like this. It's a similar way that life is created. We are not separate from other things. So we are an integral part of the creation. So the great news about that is, for relationships and that, when we change, the people around us cannot be the same. They just can't. Because when we are showing up differently, when we are opening that box, expecting something, being a different person who opens that box, the outcome of what's in that box is going to be different. It cannot be the same because we are an integral part of the creation.
And when I very first met Deb and she told me all of this, I was like, yeah. And I was on the I was very much on a journey of finding out who I was, wasn't I? And I was like, yeah, okay. And then we had a much deeper conversation and one particular sentence, which I won't get into right now, but was just like a moment for me that went, oh. And from that point onwards, I started looking at life very differently. So although I was on my self-care journey, I then started looking very much more into conscious thinking, very much more into how I experience the world, and very much more in taking responsibility and realizing that I had that choice. Now, as we all know, I've got a background in working in domestic violence for 20 odd years, so I know and understand that actually, if you do what you do, you get what you get. And this actually really deepened my thought process conversation with you, was that actually I am fully responsible. I do have a choice in all moments in time as to how I react to everything, what I want to do. And moreover, how two people can be in the same situation and there'll be two truths as what is happening.
Absolutely.
Because I'm creating mine and the other person. So if we take this interview, for example, you're creating your truth and you will leave here and you will go and talk about what you've just done. And it may be very different to what I will go away and talk to, what I am creating in my mind and what I see and how I view what's happened. And that then took me from a place of, coming in, because I attended one of your conferences, didn't I? And I attended it with that, I'm going to sit at the back because I'm really not sure about this, because it all seems a little bit, keep my guard up, really not sure what they're going to do to me, what's going to happen, because, all these people seem extremely happy and positive and, where are we going here? By day 3, I'd booked my slot for the following year, hadn't I? So, because I was like, this makes so much sense. And once you get that understanding, and it is a hard understanding, isn't it, that you are responsible for everything.
It's a hard pill to swallow. One of the reasons that I am okay with saying this is because I can look back at my life. I'm not blaming a victim because I made myself that victim. That was who I was. So I can see. But what I can really see is that without the acceptance of that and the forgiveness of that, I would not be where I am now. Part of me saying, I was responsible. I was a co-creator of that. Yeah. And if we can't, we will stay a victim forever if we believe that somebody else did something. And I do not believe there is such a thing as victimhood. I don't believe in it. It just is not part of my vocabulary, and I see that, and I see that looks like a truth, but it is no longer my truth.
But it's also just looking at that word. It's a negative word in our society. It is a negative word, isn't it? It's a vulnerable word. It's a you're not capable of looking after yourself sort of word. It's that sort of word. Whereas one of the things that when I was working within domestic violence, we talked a lot about, and then we moved towards, because I'm a great believer in it, is changing the wording.
Yeah.
And so what we started using was, if you have got to use a label, is survivor. Because that's got a positive connotation to it. Because you're moving forward. You've survived and you're moving forward, as against victim is sitting in a place. You've just labeled down into here, and you need to stay here as a victim. And you don't need to stay there. You need to be the survivor. You need to move forward. And that, I love all of that, because it's actually, I talk a lot about the fact that, rephrase what you've just said.
Mm.
And look at it from that aspect. And it might be you say the same phrase, that say it with different intonation in your voice.
Words are so powerful, and we speak things into being. We don't realize we haven't been taught this in schools. And so many people have throwaway comments about who they are. Like, I have what I call a soul contract. And this is a series of statements about who I am creating myself as every day. because we are not, as human beings, again, we're not fixed, which is why we can, be one thing in one moment and another thing, which is why I can show up as who I am now and look back at the person I was. I'm just not that person. That person is dead.
The person of that many years ago is just not there anymore. In fact, the person of even yesterday is not here, because I learned something yesterday that made me go, Anna. And it's me.
You talked about our conference. The Jenny that walked into our conference on that first day did not walk out of that conference.
No, she didn't. She absolutely didn't. And very, very true.
And that is, we talk about our conference as being life-changing. And I've had people, I had somebody, they were on the journey on the way there, and they were with someone, and they were kind of saying, life-changing, that's quite a big claim, isn't it? By the end, they came up to me and went, oh my God, it's so true. You have completely changed my life. It is a big claim, but it's a true one. When we see something different, we cannot show up as the person that we used to be. As I said, I had this series of statements about myself and how I am creating myself. And some of them are statements of how I know I am in this moment. And some of them are statements that I am growing into. And we are rather like, our minds are rather like a garden. And, garden, I've got a nice garden, and at the moment, it's sort of coming out of winter. And as it comes into spring, I know that if I want to keep my garden looking nice and have the things in there I want there, I'm going to have to do some cutting back and some weeding and some sorting out. And it's an ongoing thing. I did my garden last spring. I'm going to have to do it again this spring. I'm going to have to do it all through the growing season. I'm going to have to. And if I keep on top of it, it's, I can pull my weeds out. If I let them, we just bought a piece of land where we're going to buy a house, and the garden part of this land, I don't think it's been tended for over 10 years, and some of the brambles, the bits that we were having to cut were like this wide. I look at my garden now, there's little things coming up, and, they're tiny little things that I can just pull out with my fingers. So what I see, again, this is part of my self-care. I create myself as who I want to be, and I weed my mind, out of those things. I do not let them take a hold. I don't let them become these big things. And so definitely, when I see at the beginning of my journey, I had I needed chainsaws and axes and things to weed my wild mind.
And I'm really guessing that there were several moments where you thought, no, I can't do this today. And you have to wait for that moment, because, that happens, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And what I need today is this. And then the day, tomorrow, okay, I can do this now.
Absolutely. On our land, we had to take down some trees, and unfortunately they were, they're not going to work with the house that we're building, but there are plenty of trees there, and I do love trees. And there was one particular tree, and the stump, the roots of this tree took us 3 days to get out. And there were definitely moments where we had to walk away from it, and then we would have to come back with renewed energy to do it again. And I can see, when I look back at, and still now, I'm continually weeding my mind. And sometimes I find things that are quite big and chunky that I thought, I didn't even know that belief, that thought, that thing was still in there. But as you say, it took 3 days to get this stump out of the ground, to remove it. And sometimes, I've been on this journey. It was over 10 years ago that I left my relationship, and I am still learning, still a student of this, still having life-changing moments, still seeing something that was still in there that I had no idea that was there. So it's just beautiful.
Can I ask you one quick last question before we talk about Dare to Be You? Do you find now, because one of the things that I find is the absolute joy I see in things that cost very little. So it's very, very small things that last. For example, driving down the A38 near where I live yesterday, and I just saw a sky with a tor on the moors.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And within 30 seconds, it's changed. It's gone. It's moved on. Like that, I was literally in the car by myself going, I am so grateful you showed me this. Thanks. And anybody listening to me would probably be thinking, what? Unless they're on the same journey as me, But it was just such a moment of complete awe, of complete happiness, and it's seconds. As against before going on this journey, I needed materialistic stimulation, if you like.
Yeah.
Whereas now life's very simple, very simple.
And that is, there's a couple of things in that, a couple of little gold nuggets in there to unpack. So one of them is the proof that that love, that connection, that ability to see beauty is within you. Like that was always there. But it is like, as you weed your garden, as you clear these things, that beauty, that love, that connection, that realistically, that is what we are craving. You know, even when you were getting those material things, even when, you know, all of that, we are all looking for that connection with ourselves. That's what we're truly, that's what we want. And we don't know how to get it. And so, you know, those moments are proof of the clearing that you have done. And that comes from within you. And that is the beauty. It is, and this is again, you know, if we go back to what I see around relationships, what I see around all this, all the love you will ever need, however much you think your children bring you joy, or your partner brings you joy, or the sky brings you joy, or any of those, none of those things are what gives you joy. Joy is your birthright. Joy, love, connection, all of those things, that is who you are. As you clear away all the things that you are not, judgmental, dependent on others, insecure, all of those things, as they clear away, that connection is reflected in you, back to you in anything and everything. Like you say, you can be chopping an onion and just look at the onion and see its marvelousness, see the way its skin is, see the way it, whatever, and you have this moment, or you can do it looking at the sky, or you can do it looking, but it is because it comes from you. The love you feel for something else has zero to do with anyone else, has everything to do with who you are. And it's just such a beautiful game to play. You know, I love my partner, absolutely adore him. He's a great guy, but it is literally, and I play the game that he makes me feel this love, but I know he doesn't. That's mine.
And you know, that shows up in places where people love people who don't love them back. You know, it's, you know, you can experience that love. You don't need it.
No.
You can just experience that love yourself.
Absolutely you can. And that is the biggest, beautifulest gift of self-care. When we forgive ourselves, when we weed the garden of our mind, when we do those things, then we get to experience that beautiful clarity. We get to experience that love. And that is what we all want to do. And there doesn't even have to be anyone else in the room. There doesn't even have to be anyone else in the world for us to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that doesn't mean to say that you don't want all these wonderful people around you. Although I can sit down and I'm very happy with myself and I can validate myself and, you know, I'm good with that. But I still love it when my husband tells me he loves me.
Absolutely. Me too. Well, not your husband. Absolutely, yeah, your husband say loves me. That's all good. We might love it. Say, hi, Paddy, I love you. Absolutely. It's gorgeous. You know, I love being in the world. I love, you know, we run a conference. I work with people. I love being with people. I love that. But it is coming back to seeing. It's like when we go and watch a film. You know, I love going to the cinema, and I go to the cinema and for whatever, a couple of hours, I totally lose myself in a story on the screen. You know, if a bomb goes off or if a fire happens, you know, I don't sit there in the cinema and phone the fire brigade, because I know that isn't what's going on here. And it's a similar thing in my relationship now. You know, if stuff goes wrong or something, I don't start looking outside to him. I come back, oh, who am I being here? What's going on here? Who am I being? Because I know where true change happens now, and true sustainable change happens.
And so it's freeing, isn't it?
Totally free. But I love the film. You know, I love going to the cinema. I love the film of my life. I've made it into a total, you know, unicorns, rainbows, and lots of things. You know, you can choose what you like. This is the freedom that we have. You can create your life the way that you want it to be.
So. And that, you know, I can imagine there'll be a lot of people listening to this and going, yeah. But actually it is, and I am a testament to that process. But it's your own process.
Absolutely. Like you don't, you know, I know you use different words to me, and I know sometimes when we have conversations, I'm thinking, yeah, I wouldn't put it like that. And you're like, yeah, I wouldn't say it like that.
Yeah.
That's totally cool. It's like, there is not only one path up this mountain. There is not only one way to weed a garden, and there is not only one set of flowers. You know, I might have a preference for roses, you might have a preference for tulips, whatever. It's not, I don't want you to be a clone of me. I don't want anyone to be a clone of me.
That is the whole thing, is the fact that, and it's, I was talking to somebody the other day on a podcast about jigsaw pieces. You need to be that piece. If you're not your own unique piece, the jigsaw doesn't work.
100%.
There'd be no point in having two pieces of Deb, because that Jenny piece is gone.
Exactly.
So before we jump off, tell me about Dare to Be You, which is your business.
So Dare to Be You came about because people started to notice the huge differences in me. They were kind of like, what happened to Deb? So I sort of fell into helping people. And at some point, the joy, the love of doing that. Yeah. So I turned it into a business called Dare to Be You, because what I could see for myself was that my troubles had started because exactly that. I would look at other people's jigsaw pieces and think, oh, yours is better than mine. I need to be like you. I need to be like, I was constantly modeling myself on someone else. Was never actually asking, what do you want? What do you love? Who are you? How do you want to express yourself? So Dare to Be You is very much about helping people to see that they are their own unique jigsaw piece or aspect of the divine, a born creator. And we get nudges and ideas and pulls towards what our the divine piece that we are. We have specific things that we are called to do. But if we don't follow those nudges and those callings, then we don't thrive. And so Dare to Be You is all about learning to understand your spiritual nature, learning to understand the nature of this calling, these things, and to absolutely, even if you completely see the world in a different way to me, that's cool. See the world the way you see it. Be you, because that's what we need more of in the world. So that's what I do in Dare to Be You. We talk about how life works. We talk about nudges, we talk about miracles, we talk about that sort of thing. And then it's like, what are your nudges? What are your miracles? How do you want to express out in the world? And invite you to do that beautifully and wonderfully, and love it.
So we will put all of the details of how you can get in contact with Deb down below, so that's all accessible to you. So you can go and have a look, because also Deb's written books and there's all sorts of things that Deb hasn't alluded to there. But I just want to say thank you ever so much for coming on and talking to me today. I always love a conversation with you.
No, that was amazing. Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debs. If you feel you need a little bit of self-care accountability, then Just Being Me's accountability group is the perfect place for you. You'll be part of an incredibly supportive community, be held accountable for daily affirmations and gratitudes, as well as group coaching twice a month. Click the link below. Thanks for listening today. If you'd like to know more, you can find all the links down below. Oh, and don't forget to press subscribe so you can catch the next one. See you soon.